Hi everyone. So I had a very interesting dream yesterday, last night. So I thought I would share that dream with you and just allow you to interpret whatever you think. I'm not going to interpret the dream as I need to kind of process this, but I did feel as soon as I woke up to share it. So I am going to share the dream now. So I was in a building. I can't remember what building it was or why I was there. It was a continuation of another dream, but it did feel like it was some kind of courthouse, some kind of place where there was judgment taking place of some kind. Like I said, I can't remember why I was there, but while I was there, and it was empty, there weren't any people there. I was just in the building. And I remember seeing a portal. This portal I knew was active, as in it was moving, and I knew it was possible to step through the portal. I did not step through the portal, but what I did do is poke my head through the portal. I just didn't feel like I wanted to step right through it. I wanted to see what was there. So I poked my head through the portal. And I found myself looking into a bedroom, somebody's bedroom, and there was this human male, and he looked like a gladiator from ancient Rome. He was wearing all this armor, so he had like the breastplate, he had the little ankle armor on, and he was wearing this helmet. I could see his face. The helmet wasn't covering his face, but he was wearing the armor like he was either in his bedroom getting ready to take it off or put it on. He was huge, absolutely huge. He was at least 8 foot tall, and he saw me straight away. As my head went through the portal and peered into his bedroom, he saw me, and I could tell he was intrigued and he was somewhat amused, but he wasn't surprised to see me. And it seemed that the portal travel or communication through portals was no big deal wherever he was in his culture. It was no big deal. So I was trying to figure out if he was from my past or my future. And I actually asked him, "Are you from my past or my future?" And he laughed. I told him I was from the year 2021, but that was meaningless to him. He didn't know what I was talking about. He didn't understand that calendar. He didn't understand that counting system. And he did not know what 2021 actually meant. I wondered for a while if he was off planet, but it really seemed like this was a time portal connecting back in time within our Earth's history. So after talking to him for ages, and I don't remember everything that was said, but we were talking a long time, we figured out between us that this was Earth's past. So in our past, and it seemed to be that he was from a time between late Lemuria and early Atlantis, but he wasn't evolving in the particular ways those civilizations evolved. It was like he was part of a subculture, branching off from late Lemuria, early Atlantis, but different. So he wasn't really part of Lemuria or Atlantis. He was neither of those, but he was in that time period in between the two, as there was an overlap between them. So it was this subculture, and he was a soldier. He'd been raised to fight wars since he was born. It was all he knew. He had a very naturally aggressive side to him, but he was also nice and kind, but also a little bit, I wouldn't say I could trust him, if you know what I mean. He had a little bit of a manipulative side. It was really difficult to work out if he was service to self or service to others, because I realized he had neither polarized as service to others or service to self. The level of polarity that we know here in our time, 2021, was just not present within his culture. And he seemed to be a complete blend of both polarities, both negative and positive. The need to choose your polarity for your experience and your free will, as we have here in this reality in 2021, just simply was not there in his reality or in his experience. He was really interested in my time. He asked questions to me, and I don't remember everything we said, but I told him about the pathogenic situation and the split in society over it. And he said he knew about my time. So I asked what he meant, and he said he didn't know about the time 2021. That was meaningless to him, but he did know that there would come a time many years in the future where a pathogen would sweep the planet. And he knew this because he said a pathogen from his time had been used to create it. So I asked him what he meant. And he said that they had a pathogen in his time that produced similar symptoms to a cold or to flu, but no one ever got seriously ill. No one died from it. He said he knew that the pathogen from their time was going to be used one day, way, way, way in the future, to create some kind of new pathogen. Now, he didn't know how that would go from his time to this future time. He didn't know if it was anything to do with time travel or portal travel. He didn't know if the pathogen itself had been preserved for thousands or millions of years in some kind of time capsule, or if it had been taken from the cells of an infected corpse or a skeleton or some kind of mummy or fossil. He had no idea. He just knew that the prophecy would one day come where a pathogen from his time would be used to create some kind of new pathogen years and years in the future that would be then, released across the whole of Earth. He had a really great sense of humor. He was really intelligent. He was really knowledgeable, but he had no conscience whatsoever about killing and fighting and war, which was just completely normal to him. He just saw it as normal. And then he asked me if I could get some of the pathogen from my now time and bring it back to him so he could analyze it. So I said to him, how am I supposed to do that when I'm speaking to you in my astral body through an astral portal? And he said to me, if I could be around a child with any kind of cold or flu symptoms, and then come and find him through the portal 24 hours later or earlier, then I could pass the energy of the pathogen to him through the portal. And he said adults always catch energetic pathogens from children, even if they don't affect the adults systematically. So the adults may have no symptoms, but they will always take on the energetic pathogen from a child. He said even though his race were all 8 foot tall and huge and completely different to us, they still had the same human template as we did. So he said he would be able to energetically catch the pathogen from me if I entered the portal 24 hours or earlier after being in contact with a child who had that pathogen. So I asked him why he needed our pathogen, and he just calmly said he could use it as a weapon in his war games. It meant nothing to him. He didn't see any problem with that, just was intrigued and interested and thought it could be something worth trying. But he did admit that it might not work. As he said, none of them ever got ill from anything. So while there were symptoms of disease and illness, no one ever really got ill. No one died from illness. No one died from disease. They just had symptoms, but they meant nothing. I was quite shocked and quite horrified actually when he asked me to bring the pathogen back through the portal. And I said, I couldn't be responsible for bringing the pathogen back in time to his time. But he just laughed at me. He seemed to find a lot of things that I was saying amusing, almost as though I was kind of a different kind of woman than he was used to. It seemed as though the women there were actually treated not very well. It's like there was some kind of second-class citizen. They were only used for pleasure and for breeding, and they didn't have communications with the men. So he was laughing at me because I was completely different to the women there, almost like women aren't taken seriously. Anything they say is meaningless because they're simply there for pleasure and breeding. And because I had interesting things to say and I was communicating with him, he found it amusing and he was laughing. It was really difficult for me to connect with him and certainly to find trust for him. I actually couldn't find that I trusted him, but there was a part of him that was likable. It was really, really odd and difficult, and I hadn't ever come across anyone like that in this life, simply because he had the early traits of a service to self being. So he had the early traits of a negatively polarized being, but he also had the early traits of a service to others person and a positively polarized person. Like it was just the early seeding of this polarity that hadn't actually manifested in any kind of real configuration. I told him he needed to treat his women better. They shouldn't be some kind of second class citizen in this society, and they shouldn't be used just for pleasure and breeding. But again, he just laughed. I also remember saying to him that this is the longest astral projection conversation I've ever had, as I was talking to him for ages. And usually, what happens when I'm in this kind of dream, the visuals just begin to fade and I wake up. And I'm always disappointed, thinking, why couldn't I have stayed in for longer? But that didn't happen. And I thought it was going to happen. So I kept saying, we need to be quick because we need to have our conversation quickly because the astral projection will fade and I will lose my contact with you. But it didn't happen. I stayed through this portal, communicating with him, seeing him clearly, feeling his energy, like I was really there in his bedroom. And he said this was quite a normal thing in their culture. Um, I didn't get the feeling that he portal traveled, but I got the feeling that he was aware of portal travel, and to have a woman come through a portal, poke her head through a portal in his bedroom from the future was not something particularly unexpected. He was talking about it was something to do with the way your cells are configured. It was to do with your cellular structure. And I sort of guessed he was talking about DNA. So, as I said, I don't remember everything that we said, but I was not particularly happy about bringing the pathogen back to him. It wasn't something that I intended to do or felt that I should do. And he wasn't that bothered. It was just, it might be a good thing to do because I could use it as a weapon in the war games. But, if you don't want to bring it back, then don't. He had a tiny bit of manipulation, but it wasn't anything that big. And he was also pretty sort of straight as well. Very unusual mix of character and polarization. And I had time to say goodbye to him and withdraw from the portal, which isn't something I'm usually ever able to do in astral projections involving portals, because usually, as I said, the dream fades. But I did manage to do this. I did say goodbye. I did not give him my name, even though he asked for it. I did not give him my name. I did wonder, should I say I'm Petra? Should I say I'm Pixie? But I decided not to give him my name. I felt like I didn't want to be tracked by his time back in my time. I didn't make any promises to return. And I was able to withdraw from the portal and continue with the dream, which was a completely different dream, without being woken up, as usually occurs. After an astral projection, I usually wake up because the realization of that realism and closeness and extreme pineal activation usually wakes me up, and it didn't. I was able to withdraw from the portal and continue on with a completely different dream. So I just found this very interesting. It really felt as though I had been there. I mean, I know this is a dream, and it could all be aspects within me and my own activation. And that may be the same thing as actually really being there, but it felt like I really was there. It felt like I really had poked my head through an active portal and spoken to someone from this ancient civilization that occurred somewhere between late Lemuria and early Atlantis, but wasn't actually part of that civilization and was a subculture of trained soldiers or gladiators. And the fact that he gave me this information about the pathogen, I found really interesting. Is this a metaphor for a retro pathogen? Or, is this actually something that may well have happened in some way? Were ancient pathogens mixed with newly created ones to create this pathogen? I'm going to leave all these interpretations up to you, but I did find the dream interesting and I felt that I needed to share it. So thank you so much for listening, and I will be back with more videos. Lots of love. Bye.
What is karma? Are there ways we can balance this and become karma-free? Is there a particular nutritional plan we should follow for ascension? Do we increase our karmic balance by eating certain foods? How can we utilize sex magic to work with karma and move through ascension? There are many lessons we can learn from the peoples of ancient Lemuria, a civilization that existed before our known history on planet Earth. As we move through an ascension process collectively, we move back into a new Lemuria, and we take with us all the knowledge we have accumulated since those times. In this transmission from the white-winged collective consciousness of 9, key codes are presented for cellular memory recall, linking the reader beyond Atlantis and into the harmonious frequencies of the first physical civilization on the Earth, Lemuria. The 9 respond to questions using the Lemurian way as a template. Key-coded responses trigger activations within the reader as they receive the wisdom codes, standing as rainbow warriors of Gaia, moving into abundance, alchemy, and Stargate ascension. This transmission is dear to my heart, and I'm so very pleased to announce my new book, Lessons from a Living Lemuria.